Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming to the July 28th regular council meeting. We had no closed session tonight, so we have no closed session report. I'll call the open session order. And Joe, you want to lead us in the pledge?
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Wes, can you do a roll call first?
So Mayor, if you don't mind, we can just announce that all council is here with the exception of Marty Mendoza, who let us know that she's not going to be in attendance tonight. She's not feeling well.
All right, thanks for the update. We'll go with that. And can I get a motion to approve the agenda order?
Motion to approve the agenda order.
Second. Thanks. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same. All right. All right, we'll move on to item 3, agency reports.
City Councils. Before the public, Kevin Griffiths, Sergeant for the Placer County Sheriff's Office. Busy month for the Sheriff's Office. We've handled 4,400 calls for service. Out of those 4,400, we took 343 people to jail. That's county-wide, or I'm sorry, out of that 343 calls of service were out of the greater Colfax area, out here in the community. And we arrested 250 individuals county-wide, with 14 of them coming out of the greater Colfax area. Deputies made over 700 traffic stops through in the month of June. Stats for this month will be out hopefully at the next city council meeting. National Night Out is next Tuesday. We'll be bringing up a few deputies, a few different vehicles up to Colfax. I start in Auburn and then I'll make my way up here after that, after the start of that. If you've noticed, the boats are already coming in for the weekend. Rollins Lake is full every single day. That's what people are talking about. This is the lake that everybody's coming to, with Folsom closed. Campfire West is nothing but a mud hole, and the river is already busy. So we're seeing a lot more boat traffic. You're seeing our sheriff's office boat out here every single day of the weekend, taking care of things. And we work on that lake with Nevada County. So 2 boats out there trying to keep everything under control and take care of things. The rest of the county is doing fairly well. Busy day today. We had, unfortunately, SAC PD was up doing a training ride outside of Forest Hill. One of their officers ran into a deer. He was flown over to SRMC, pretty minor injuries, a bunch of road rash, elbow was tore up pretty good. Probably going to need some work on that at the end of the day. But for what it was, that was a big deer that he ended up hitting, and deer didn't fare very well, but he was going to be fine after a few months of rehab to that left shoulder. Getting hot out there. I'm sure you guys have all seen that. Our deputies are still out doing things. Your nonprofits are very, very busy. The deputies are starting to intermingle with Andrea a lot. I got a list from her this week of all the organizations and all the different events. They were at the community event at the church on Saturday, and then we had 2 deputies that showed up to the open gym and decided to take on some teenagers. One of our deputies, Deputy Say Lee, who actually came to us from SAC PD, is apparently quite the baller and was able to keep up with the kids. Deputy Sanchez, who was also out there, not so much. So we're going to try to find a couple other ringers that can come up here and put those kids to the test, or I'll bring my own boys up here to play basketball because I can't compete anymore. I'm kind of like, I can't jump. It's just what it is. So other than that, if there's no other questions, or if there are questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. All right. Nope. Thanks. Okay. Thank you.
Officer Nick.
Good evening, Officer Chris Nick, California Highway Patrol, Gold Run area. I'm back. So I was on vacation for 3 weeks, so not a whole lot to report tonight. I just got a note from the commander to make sure that I emphasize that we are doing our very best to deal with the truck situation and the brake fires. And was it yesterday or the day before? We had 3 of them in one day. The one here at Foster Hills Canyon and the one up here at, we call it 55 Curve. And then there was another one right here in Colfax area too. So 3 in one day. We are doing our best. We even have overtime units that are coming up to assist us. We've called the commercial enforcement guys to come up to help us enforce the brake check area. Ultimately, it boils down to trucks are going too fast. They're going too fast, and then they're on the brakes heat up, especially in this heat, and they catch on fire. It's a yearly problem. It's a daily problem that we face every year. They catch on fire going downhill, and they overheat going up the hill in summertime. So it's an ongoing problem. We're doing the best we can to deal with it. We'll try to stay on top of it, see if we can't prevent something tragic from happening. Sergeant mentioned National Night Out, so I'll touch on that. And then the other thing I was going to emphasize is school starts on the 10th of August. So traffic's going to be picking up again. So just be prepared for that, aware from that. So it's going to get backed up, likely onto the freeways, especially because we have, but they got the barriers set up. So that might make it a little interesting situation there as the cars are coming off the freeway, as all the construction still going on. So just be aware of that. And that's it. That's all I've got. You got anything for me? Any questions?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
Up by Immigrant Gap on the right-hand side coming down is that area where all the trucks are supposed to stop, check their brakes and all.
It's Blue Canyon. It's right between Nyack and Blue Canyon.
Yep. It looks like that area is getting pretty heavily contaminated with trash.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
Between the garbage, Caltrans has to go out there quite frequently and pick it up. I don't like making traffic stops there because your boots stick to the ground.
Yep.
And I'm not going to tell you why.
Well, we know.
But yeah. It's that's an ongoing issue that we're trying to deal with too. And Caltrans, I mean, they have guys out there literally in just almost hazmat suits out there trying to clean that mess up. So
right. So I have 2 questions related to that.
Mm-hmm.
One is, what do we do to kind of quadruple the number of porta potties that are there so that some of this mess can be controlled?
Okay, so
and what do we do to get Caltrans to routinely clean it like daily almost?
Caltrans has a staffing issue like we do, but we can. I know they're on it, and they are working on it as hard as they can. And I'll bring it up again with them just to make sure and express it as a concern to the community as well. As we've done things before, like put dumpsters up there and more porta potties. People knock them over. Dumpsters get full with refrigerators and people dumping their mattresses and that sort of thing in there. And it ended up being a worse problem than what it is now. So I don't have the answer besides that we just need to keep doing our best to enforce it and stay on it. Yesterday I went up there. I literally parked at the beginning of the brake check and just sat there and waited. And people and trucks just literally just keep going. They don't stop. I don't know if they're oblivious or
don't care or what.
Don't care either way. So, we're doing our best to deal with it. What else? We do have something to talk about railroad days. Is that's coming up?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
One other question is there any significant increase in the bear problems in the area?
Only at my house.
Because I heard just outside of Colfax a number of sightings.
I've had I don't know. I can't speak to that publicly, but personally, they're in my shed every night. So I had to go get under the lock and put a deadbolt on the shed to keep them out. So he's learned how to manipulate the door handle and get into my shed to get to my garbage.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was talking to a number of people that are right on the edge of Colfax that said they're starting to see more bear sightings.
It wouldn't surprise me. And I live 13 miles up the hill, so it's quite frequent up there. So, it wouldn't surprise me. And somebody else, maybe fire might have a better answer. I don't know. So,
I know in the Tahoe area, it's getting specifically really aggressive. They're breaking into people's houses, and you'd think they're people. They're not at all afraid of people.
Yeah, that's it. Like I said, they figured out how to manipulate my handle on my shed and open the door. So I had to get a deadbolt.
Once they get in the trash, they know there's a food source.
Yeah, then it gets worse, and then they start getting a lot more aggressive, and then you got to take further steps.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Officer Nate. Placer County Fire, Chief Estes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Brian Estes, I'm the County Fire Chief for Placer County Fire Department. Chief Egan had to leave here just a few minutes ago. He had a vehicle accident with extrication up at the 2080 split, just down Bowman Lakes Road. So I'll deliver to the best of my ability the presentation he had, which is really going to center around a little bit of an update on our transition in our service to the city of Colfax through the Placer County Fire Department. Before I get into that, I just wanted to brief real quick on a couple of things that have happened in the last few weeks. Obviously you're seeing the smoke out there, and there's nothing locally happening. All of that smoke is drift smoke from the Dixie fire. We got a pretty significant 180-degree wind shift today, so all that drift smoke is coming down Canyon, but obviously that got a lot of public awareness risen today. In the unit, we've had a fairly significant amount of equipment committed to the Dixie fire. We are back to full staffing today, even when we had a 1-engine strike team, which was 5 engines, a Lima strike team, which is 2 dozers and hand crews, number of overhead. Because of our depth of resource, we were still able to fully staff all of our fire stations, including Station 30. So we're real proud of that. Regionally, the Grass Valley, in the last week, the Grass Valley Emergency Command Center dispatched 700 calls, took about 2,800 incoming calls for service. Some of the more significant calls that we ran in the last week, we had 24 vegetation fires in the state responsibility area, 7 vegetation fires in local responsibility areas, 7 residential structure fire, 10 technical rescues, and 4 swiftwater rescues. In fact, the crews out of Station 30 just cleared a technical rescue here about an hour and a half ago. So as Sergeant Griffiths said, we've been extremely busy as well, not only with vegetation fires across the region, but with our all-risk call volume. So I wanted to transition real quickly, and if I could be allowed to just pass out copies of the what we call an incident action plan. This is not necessarily anything for the agenda. It's just more information for all of you to see. And once those are passed out, I'll explain it.
The crash about 20s, it's so little.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. But I can go.
Thank you.
Huh?
But I can go up there.
Yeah. So an incident action plan is something that we kind of live by on all of our incidents, whether they're simple in nature or very, very significant in nature. And essentially it's a document and a planning process that allows us to delegate and divide our labor so that we make sure that we have clear objectives, we have a plan, we staff it accordingly, and we have a checks and balance system with an unrun goal to make sure we accomplish the objective. In this case, being a successful transition from the Colfax Volunteer Fire Department, full integration into the Placer County Fire Department. And if you remember, on the 23rd, we set a 60-day transition period. So we are just a little bit over our halfway point, and I feel that we're really on track with a good plan to meet our transition period well before that 60-day period. So Chief Egan and his staff developed this incident action plan, and as you look through it, you'll see that it's got, it's got overall management goals associated with it. It's got what we call an organizational chart, which spells out all of the people assigned to different duties. And one of the things you'll notice is it was very important to us to integrate all of our volunteers here from Colfax into this planning process. So especially when we get into things like inventory of equipment and history of the vehicles and apparatus and stuff, it's really important to have the knowledge of our volunteers here to help us through that. And so that when that transition occurs, everyone's got great ownership in the unrun product. And then as you see, and you get through what we commonly call the 204s, it's basically spelling out for each task that you have, there's people assigned, There's specific duties or tasks to be accomplished, and there's kind of an end run goal to it. And, on a fire, we will produce one of these every 24 hours when we see these major vegetation fires. For this particular event, we've produced a kind of an ongoing incident action plan, and it's going to take us through the end of this 60-day transition period. So as Mayor Lohman knows, this last Saturday, all of the volunteers, with the exception of 2, I believe, came down to County Fire Headquarters in Bowman, got sized for new protective equipment, signed all the paperwork to transition into the County Fire Volunteer Program. I know Chief Egan took the titles for the apparatus and vehicles from the city to the county. So I think we got a really good plan, and we're being very open and transparent, integrating our volunteers with the entire plan. And I feel very confident that at the end of the 60 days, we're going to have a really clear, transparent, and very professional transition, and continue to really proudly serve the city of Colfax into the future. So wanted to share that with you. You feel free to keep it, share it. It's certainly not a confidential document by any means. And then lastly, this wasn't something that was really widely advertised or anything. It did not have any political component or any media component to it, but we did have a visit on the 22nd from the governor and the director of FEMA. They were out, and we took them back out to the landfill site that all of you were with us in 2019. And really, it was just kind of a quick assessment of the North Fork of the American Shaded Fuel Break project, and specifically for FEMA, to let them see the good work that CAL FIRE and County Fire has been doing out on this project, because that's one of the things we want to access into the future is federal FEMA money, especially as we cross those boundaries into BOR, BLM lands. Getting that FEMA money is really important to the overall objective. So you may have heard some rumblings about those folks being in town. Really didn't have much of it was a very quick visit, and didn't have a political or big media component to it, but want to make sure you were on board with that. So that's all I have to report, unless there's any questions from council. Okay, thank you very much.
And I agree. I think the transition has gone very smoothly. We appreciate being fitted for gear so quickly, and we all got the opportunity to go down to Advantage Gear now, and we're getting our uniforms done. So
yeah,
moving along smoothly.
Yep, and lastly, and I appreciate that, Sean. Lastly, you reminded me, at the request, I believe, of Councilman Fatula, we do have an end run plan for a formal transition ceremony, and we'll be getting more information to all of you as we finalize those plans. So really, really excited about it, and think it's going to go very well. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. All right. Do we have any other agency representatives?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. Tim Ryan with Colfax Chamber of Commerce. Just wanted to report, let you know, last Thursday we had a ribbon cutting and a plaque presentation for a new business called Perspecular. And this is on Church Street, 34 Church Street. Great little venue for kids and family, a lot of individual interaction. And hopefully this is going to be something that's just going to grow. Also, I did hand out you some flyers for our upcoming events. Wednesday, August 4th, Coffee and Conversations. That's going to be at 8 o'clock in the morning until 9:30. The speaker will be Christy Riley, and she is the owner for Yes. I should have stopped while I was ahead. So it should be a very good and informative kind of a meeting, how she started, how she got here. And also it is open to all of our business members and to ask questions and get any information. Then on, Friday, August 6th, we're having a ribbon cutting at the Chamber Colfax Visitor Center. And we've done some remodeling there, have some new products there that we're selling. So this is something we'd like everybody to show up to. And these are all open up to the public also. And then Monday, August 16th, 5:30 to 7:30, we'll have a mixer. And it's going to be at Connie's Creations, right down the street here on the corner. Colfax Theater and Scoops. Refreshments, raffle prizes, ice cream, candy, a photo by the new mural that Foxy McCleary has painted. So a fun evening. So we're looking forward to that. Also in the handouts I gave you, there is a flyer for Railroad Days. Sorry, Fred. Hope I didn't help you there. Okay. Well, that's going to shorten our meeting then. For Railroad Days and then also for Winterfest. The chamber in the past put up new Stars and Stripes flags down Auburn Street. They last about 2 months and they're faded, they're ripping. So we have new ones. We are going to be putting those up with some help with the city, I understand. So yeah, that'll make things look a lot nicer. And then also too, if it is possible, if we could be added back to the agencies as giving a report, we'd kind of appreciate that. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Hey, Tim, can you make a note of that for next time? Thanks, man. Right. Good. You want to talk about grape machinery?
Hi, I'm Andrea. I'm the president of the Colfax Green Machine. I just wanted to kind of go over 3rd of July final numbers and then a couple new things we got going on. So for the whole event, we are excited. This is the first year in the 6 years that we've had it where we actually made all of our donation money. So we got all the 20,000. So each one of our booths, we were able to make $15,000 for our group. We had 4 beer gardens. We had one that just strictly went to skate park. We had 2 other beer gardens and we also had the kids zone. So each group got to make $1,200, which is the most they've ever made. Usually it's between $300 and $600. So they were all very excited about that. With the exception for skate park, they were able to make $2,500 because they, like I said, they had their own beer garden and they also they were selling t-shirts, bricks, and stickers. The money went to the Colfax High School's trap team, Nordic ski team, the football team, the Junior Falcons football and cheer program, the Sierra Foothills Little League, Colfax Elementary PTA, and our newest group that's with us is the Colfax Youth Open Gym. So all of them got the $1,200. We really want to thank the city for all your guys' help. We really appreciated it. Also to CAL FIRE and Placer County Sheriff. We really do appreciate all the help that we got the day of. And it actually went the smoothest it's ever gone. So we really appreciate it. Another thing I wanted to bring up is that we have a new group, the Colfax Youth Open Gym. This was an idea from a individual. His name was Isaac Maldonado. He came to me and asked if we could do something for the kids in the community because there's not a whole lot for these kids to do. So he had an idea of doing open gym, which would be like just playing anywhere from board games, weightlifting, basketball, baseball, all the above. So we liked the idea. We went to the community center. We were able to get the community center on board and donations from them. And we were able to launch our program 3 weeks ago. So it was on the weekends, it's from 10 to 2. The kids are able to come play and have lunch for free. It's a sponsored event by Green Machine. Also, the open gym is getting more volunteers so they can volunteer within our organization so they can get money for their food and their equipment. So during the summer, it's going to be every weekend. And then once school starts, which is in August, it's going to be the second weekend of every month on Saturday and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 2. We were really excited. We had Placer County Sheriff deputies come play basketball with our kids. It was the coolest thing to watch, and they were so excited. He even had a little 7-year-old little girl out there bouncing a ball with them, who can bounce the highest. It was super cute. We're also doing this other thing with the open gym. We're doing vision boards. We're collecting magazines right now so that the kids can come in. They can make their vision board to see and to tell us basically where they want to be, what they want to be when they grow up, what they like, what they want to accomplish. So we're gonna do that August 15th, and that'll be part of our whole open gym. And we're hoping to get CAL FIRE and Placer County to come back and kind of see them present their boards as well. And that's pretty much it. So thank you.
We're good. Thank you. Fred, did you want to add any more to the railroad days? I doubt that.
Okay, Fred Abbott, president of Colfax Railroad Days, Inc. We will have Railroad Days this year, the 18th and 19th. We're having pretty much the same thing we had in previous years. We've got the 3 different groups of reenactors coming, gunfights, lots of debauchery and fun in the streets. The 2 main differences this year, the vendors are not going to have to break down on Saturday night and come back Sunday. We will have security roving the area, so the streets downtown will stay closed, the Main Street and Railroad Street. The other is we will have a street dance from 5:30 until 9:30 on North Main. And we invite everybody to come down and bring your twinkle toes for the event. For the first time, we are not having to beg for trains to come. Everybody wants to participate. I've got to make sure with Francisco Casillo that UP will be bringing up equipment, but they have allowed us to use their property. Things are going well. We want to thank the city for their generous donation and support for this. And anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Thanks for masterminding Railroad Days. We appreciate it. It's a great event. Did we have any other agency groups that I missed? No? All right, great. Then we'll move on to item 4. We don't have any presentations tonight. So on item 5, public hearing. We do have a public hearing item tonight, so we'll sort of amend.
Good evening, Mayor Lohman, members of the council, members of the public. My name is Emmanuel Ursu. It's a pleasure to meet some of you for the first time in person. So it's good to be here this evening. This agenda item before you is consideration of the housing element and the addendum to the EIR that goes with the housing element. The housing element, as you know, is part of the general plan. It's one of the 7 or actually 8 chapters of the general plan mandated by state law to be updated. Used to be a 4-year cycle. We went to an 8-year cycle and hope to stay on that 8-year cycle. We need to get this adopted document into the states before September 10 of this year. This process started over a year ago with the selection of Placeworks, a consulting firm that prepared the document. Jenny Castellum with Placeworks is here this evening. Actually, Jenny and I go back a ways. We worked together in another community on a housing element, and they did a wonderful job. The part of this process was a public participation process. There was outreach to community groups. A workshop was held last year. The draft document was posted and available for public review and comment. We consulted with HCD on the draft document. And so it's been an iterative process with revisions that have been made to it. There are no changes to the zoning map that is required to implement the housing element. There are several amendments to the zoning code. Most of those amendments are required to bring the housing element, or the zoning code into compliance with changes in state law. So for instance, there have been a lot of changes around accessory dwelling units. Our code still refers to them as second dwelling units. There have been other changes in state law that our code needs to be updated to be in compliance with state law. So most of the changes and most of the programs in the document call for those changes, again, to be consistent with state law. And with that, I'll turn it over to...
1 second?
Yes, of course.
So when you mention the term there, can you just define for everybody
what an accessory dwelling unit is?
Yes, so an accessory dwelling unit is basically, it's a second unit on a property zoned for single family use. So under the current code, which is outdated, they're referred to as second dwelling units. So they're allowed in single family districts. There's a primary residence, the main dwelling, the main residence on the property, and then a second dwelling unit or an accessory dwelling unit is allowed to be constructed. There are also what are called junior ADUs, junior accessory dwelling units, where an existing space within an existing home is converted. Those are much smaller. The intent in state law is to provide more housing opportunities, and this was a way that the state legislature determined could be accomplished in terms of increasing the housing supply. If there are no more questions for me, I will turn it over to Ms. Castellum, and then we'll be open for questions about the us. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel. Good evening, Jennifer Castellum with PlaceWorks. I have a quick presentation for you to kind of go over a little bit of some of the things that we had to work through with the state on your housing element. So Emmanuel kind of gave you a little bit of overview, but just a refresher. The housing element is one of the 8 mandated elements of the general plan. It is unique in the fact that we look at what the existing needs are for Colfax, as well as we project out what the needs will be over the next 8-year period. We have to go through a land inventory analysis where we identify vacant and underutilized land that could accommodate housing development should the market want to build that. It is not the job of Colfax to build these housing units. It's the job to help to show what land is available at varying densities, meaning high density, low density, single family, multifamily, all of those. We also look at what resources there are to help facilitate the development of housing, and then what potential constraints there might be to housing. And so that's kind of the thick piece of the document, is all the demographic information. Constraints could be anywhere from environmental constraints to permit processing timelines and fees and how much it costs to build, how long does it take to get a building permit. So those are the things that we had to evaluate in there. We also have to do a checks and balances process where we look at your previous housing element from the last 8 years and look at what programs were effective, what programs were actually implemented, which programs didn't necessarily work out, and which ones are completed to move those programs forward. And that helps to put together the policies and actions for staff over this next 8-year period. So that's kind of the matrix that staff will follow for the 8 years of things to be done. So the planning period for this next 8-year housing element started this year in 2021 and goes through 2029. The adoption due date was May 15th, but seeing as we got started during COVID and things were a little wonky there for a little while, the state does give a grace period of 120 days, and that's the September 10th deadline that is rapidly approaching. So the action would be for the council to adopt the housing element, then we will submit it to the state for their 90-day review process. Adopting it by September 10th will then keep the state or keep Colfax on an 8-year update cycle. Failure to do that would mean that you would have to revert back to a update every 4 years, and it's a lot more paperwork involved that it's not probably beneficial to you.
Can I ask you a question on what you just said?
Yeah.
You said they have a 90-day process, so it was September 10th date.
You have to adopt
includes
it.
The 90 days?
That is excluded from it. So you adopt it tonight, and then we submit it. But you've met your statutory deadline.
So we could wait till September 10th to adopt it.
Yes, you could.
Right.
Okay. What drives the housing element is the regional housing needs allocation process. So the state comes up with a number every 8 years for a growth projection, and then that number being, I think it's a couple 100,000 across the whole state, is then trickled down into our case, the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. for what they project as growth over the next 8-year period will be about 153,000 new units. Then that is then subdivided into Placer County, which got an allocation of 31,000, down to the city of Colfax, which 97 units. So the job of the housing element was to identify that there is vacant land available to develop 97 units, which we showed that there was ample land available. Should, again, the market produce these units, there is place to accommodate them. And they are of all varying densities, from single family to multifamily. So as you can see, the way the state looks at this is it's somewhat of a land use exercise. The very low and low income category, they're looking at a denser product of, I believe, 15 units an acre here. So as you can see, there is a capacity for at least 63 units. In the moderate, that would be like possibly a duplex type product. There is a capacity for 69 units, and then above moderate would be all of your single family homes. There is capacity for 137 units. So we were able to show that there's plenty of land available for development. This sometimes is very tricky in communities where they do not have any vacant land. So this can hold up adoptions of housing elements. So we were able to work through this relatively easily based on what land uses you have available here in Colfax. So the process for the housing element is we submit it to the state for a 60-day review. We submitted that on April 7th. We had a call with them about a month in on May 19th. And then we provided revisions. Staff participated in the call. There were some minor cleanup items. Since the last housing element, I'll let you know that there's been a lot of new state laws. So as someone who is somewhat of a practitioner who's been doing this for 20 years, the laws have changed and they've made my job a little bit harder, but we are working through that. We received a letter on May 28th where they said, not quite there yet. You have to make a few more tiny little revisions. So as you know, with the state, they always have to have the last word on everything. So that's where that came into place. We made those additional revisions and then had a call with them on July 20th to just confirm that the document that you have in front of you will meet compliance upon adoption. And then again, 90-day review. They give themselves 90 days to review it. At that time, then you would receive a letter saying you're in compliance with state law for the next 8 years and you don't have to touch it. So just to get into the weeds a little bit here on the level of scrutiny and detail of some of the things that they wanted, there have been some new laws that the state feels that if you have, so this housing element in front of you is the 6th cycle housing element. So the last 8 years, and then subsequently before it went to 8 years, is a 5-year cycle. So the 4th and 5th cycle housing elements included land inventories. And the state is saying that if you include these same sites, these same vacant sites in your land inventory more than 2 times, which we are because they have not developed, that you have to add some additional policies to help show how you're incentivizing development. Again, it is not the job of the city to build the units. It's the job to show that there's land available. So we're still doing that. The code development and zoning code and development standards, they wanted to clarify that they are available on the website. So that was very minor. Include a discussion on typical densities. So we had to look at projects that have actually been approved, developments that have been approved, units that have been approved, and what the density is. So based on what the land of the site is and how much of the site is taken up by a project, they want to see how development is actually occurring. So this is a newer thing, as well as the realistic capacity, the way we calculate the land inventory. We say, the zoning is R2, you can build this many units in it. They wanted some more fine tuning in that. We added a program to clean up some of the zoning with some of the R2 zoning from the zoning code and the general plan land use designations. What will be coming forward next, my colleague is working on is a general plan update. So you'll be seeing some of these changes that were requested in the housing element will then be implemented into the general plan so that everything will be copacetic and all match. One of the latest things that's giving me the most heartache is fair housing assessments and identifying fair housing complaints. And this is very difficult, especially for a small community such as Colfax, this information. So we have to reach out to, where the code enforcement or where fair housing enforcement and complaints go, which is legal services. They don't in Auburn, and they don't have the best records. They don't keep the best records. And so it's a little bit of a wild goose chase, but we came up with some information about what fair housing looks like and making sure that there is fair housing practices going on within the housing that is available throughout Colfax. So those things were cleaned up, and that's been rectified. As Emmanuel mentioned, we did an addendum to the general plan EIR. You'll see a more robust environmental document that will come along with the general plan update. We did not need to rezone, as I said previously, when we get into situations with communities where they don't have land to meet the arena. We have to identify sites to increase the density, allowable density, and we didn't have to do that here. So that's why an addendum is a more ironclad document. And then all of the policies in it that are required to be implemented will be done separately after the process. So the plan would be to adopt the addendum to the general plan EIR along with the housing element. Oh, and that's it for me. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from the council?
This is public hearing.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sorry.
We can't do it yet.
No, can't. All right. Thank you for the presentation. I will open the public hearing and accept public testimony. Do we have any comments from the public? Did we receive any public testimony?
I do.
If you come to the mic.
Just to clarify, there's no new requirement for a new meter or services to the properties that get the additional dwellings, correct? And you also can't sell them separately if you're gonna like add a structure to an existing single, zoned residence. You can't, there's no requirement for a new sewer hookup, and there's no requirement for a new electricity hookup, correct? And so that's just something you guys might want to consider. Just wanted to throw that in there.
The state law, as it pertains to accessory dwelling units, does prohibit cities from collecting development impact fees in certain situations. So if an ADU is under 750 square feet, the city cannot collect the impact fees. School district fees cannot be collected, I believe, if it's over 500, or excuse me, under 500 square feet. If an ADU is over 750 square feet, it's proportional to the primary size of the primary residence. So it's a very nuanced. There's a lot of different scenarios in state law. So we'll need to go through and make sure that we update the city's zoning code to be consistent with all those requirements. But yeah.
So wait, just to answer his question there, because it wasn't clear.
Yes.
So let's break into a couple. If somebody was to build an ADU on their property, do they require to put in a separate, I think he said electrical service?
That would be a PG&E question. Yeah. The city would not require a separate.
That's a landlord PG&E question, not a city question. Yeah. So that's an easy one. The answer is no.
Yes.
Right? So does the city require a separate sewer EDU charge?
No, not unless the unit is greater than 750 square feet.
Okay, but that's his second question, right? And then other utilities are just utilities like the electric, so we can treat them all the same.
Correct.
Does that make sense? Okay, right.
We do have one public comment received on Facebook from Travis Berry. It says the new units in Shadowwood should apply to this new housing element, and the others off Iowa Hill Road should apply for the higher ones. The minimum income threshold, I don't know, but as stated, there is space.
We comment on that? Okay. All right. Any other public comments? Oh, all right. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and open it up to council for comments and questions. David, do you have anything?
No.
Joe?
Well, I got a few miscellaneous ones just for clarification, right? So, and I read through this whole package, right? So can I get one of you, whoever knows the package the best? Right, so on page 6, there's an item that's number 6.8 that says low barrier navigation centers. Right, what is a low barrier navigation center?
That's a good question. It's an emergency shelter type facility that offers services to persons who are experiencing homelessness.
So in Colfax, we have none.
You do not have any.
Right.
The law says you have to identify a zone where a homeless shelter or a low barrier navigation could be allowed.
So for instance, the ones that have been identified in Auburn could be ones that Colfax counts.
It's not within your city limits. You can't count that, but we can, in our analysis, we say all the services in the region that are available to homeless persons, but yeah.
Right, so that was one question.
Good question.
Yep. The next question I have is, when you showed the table that had the potential sites, that one there, why would you show the surplus sites? Because you also made a comment earlier, or one of you made the comment about you can't count it for more than cycle 4 and 5 or 5 and 6 or whatever. So if we didn't count the surplus ones in the current cycle, then we could potentially count them in a future cycle.
That's a very, very good point you make. So the reason that we show a surplus is that it gives you more flexibility. Aside from the multiple counting, which doesn't mean you can't count again, it just means you have to make them available for development by right if an affordable project was to come into one of those sites. So we include the surplus because there's a law that says that if we just included the 63 and you had a project come into one of those sites that wasn't an affordable project, but that you really liked the project and you wanted to approve it, this gives you the flexibility to be able to approve projects the way that you see fit and so that you can still, it's a whole balancing act situation. So while the Facebook gentleman said we can count these, you will report every year. You do an annual progress report to the state and you say we developed this, and this. If we were to show that you did, if you built on all of those, say those lower income sites and they weren't actually affordable projects, then you would be in a shortfall situation, which then requires you to do a rezone. So showing that you have a surplus gives you flexibility to approve projects.
But there's other options besides rezoning. Like for instance, if we went to Placer County and said we want to expand the city to include some of the other developable land around Colfax that's currently unoccupied, right? That could be something that's then part of the city now, and that could be then used in your calculation, if I understand.
It could be used in future calculations.
Future,
we can only assume what is available right now.
Yeah, because we don't know if Placer County would agree or wouldn't agree and all that. But should Placer County say, yeah, there's 500 acres over here that's undeveloped land, and the city were to acquire it, we could then count that in a future one.
Yes, you could.
Should we do that?
Correct.
Right? Okay, Rick, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, all right. And then to the next one. Then down on page 11, there's one that says, the custodian of the documents is the department head of the City of Colfax Planning Department. I didn't know we had any department heads identified in Colfax.
Public Works Director, you have the Planning Director, and the Finance Director. They're the department heads for the city.
So is this the planning Director?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank. Okay, and then you have another section in here that says you're combining a variety, this is on the program chart, a variety of these different programs together. And it says in here, under one of the programs, program 1, it says this information will be available by April 1st, 2014. And I'm just looking and it says like, is that a true statement?
We tried to space out timing.
No, the 2014 is in the past.
Oh, so
It says
what, yes, so
will
what
be
you're, oh,
available.
I'm sorry. So what you're looking at is what I mentioned before, that's the review previous. So all of the matrix table is what was in your 2014 housing element or when it, and so what we're looking at in that is the right-hand column of what actually was accomplished.
Okay.
So
Right.
that's the whole, we have to go through every
So
program
that's-
to say what
that's
is
the
done.
linkage between what
That's the
was
last
and what is.
housing element, yes.
Okay, right.
Sorry about
And I
that.
have a couple more. Bear with me for a second. So then you have another section in here where it says the notes on the following programs are modified. There's a underlined strikeout that's used for one thing, and then there's italics underlined that's used for the ads. Okay, and it only goes for basically page 20. So on 21, which is the next page, which also talks about programs, there's no underlines and there's no italics.
Right, so
Is this all new?
so no, the only thing, so the whole document is new. What the italics and the underlines are our way of showing the state the changes that we made to the draft so that it is the new things that they wanted to see that meet state
Okay,
law.
I understand that for this page,
Yeah,
but the page right behind it has no underlines, italics, or strikeouts.
so there was no changes that needed to be made to that.
So then this is all current.
All current,
Okay, right. That was really ambiguous in here,
sorry.
right? And then we have an ambiguity, which I don't know if it's a Mick question or your question at all. Because we have this thing that's on page 22, and it's on the Affordable Fair Housing, AFFH.
Yes.
And it says in here that says, the plan shall take no actions to address discrepancies in housing needs and to assess the opportunity for all persons. And then it's the normal thing, regardless of race, religion, sex, marital status, etc. But back on page 21, it includes female-headed households, but does not include non-female headed households. So I would just like to understand, we're discriminating within a page. So can you explain that one to me? I
Sure,
don't
so
understand.
we have to call out female-headed households as a special needs group because that's the way the state defines it. So in the other section, we're talking about making sure that housing is available to everyone. But so there are special needs groups. There's seniors, there's female-headed households, there's homeless. So
I understand that, but
Yeah.
it doesn't say in here that these are identified as special needs groups. So I'm just saying, if you're identifying groups,
sure.
and you exclude a group by your own definition on the next page, it seems inconsistent.
Got it.
So does the state say you can't include other groups? That you're legally forbidden from including other groups?
No, you're not legally.
So then I think this needs to be amended to include both types of heads of households. Because by the way, in my neighborhood up there, I'm dealing with two people that are single male-headed households that are really struggling because of being laid off and stuff like that. And I'm just saying, like, well, shouldn't this cover both?
You know, for clarity of conversation and the people at home, do you mind reading the context of the full paragraph we're discussing?
I could, but
I think it'd be helpful.
yeah. So I'll read the one here. It says, the AFFH plan shall take actions to address significant discrepancies in housing needs and in access to opportunity for all persons, regardless of race, religion, sex, marital status, ancestry, national origin, color, familial status, or disability, or other characteristics protected by the California Fair Employment and Housing Act, Part 2.8, commencing with section 12,900 of Division 3 of Title 2 of Section 65008 and any other state or federal housing plans and planning law.
Paragraph that actually specifically uses the term female head of household.
So this is in the page before it on page 21. It says implementation measure 6.1, affordable housing development. That's the title of it. The city shall work with housing developers to expand opportunities for affordable lower income housing and special needs groups, including seniors, persons with disabilities, persons with development disabilities, extremely low income households, female headed households, farm workers, and homeless persons by creating partnerships, providing incentives, and pursuing funding opportunities. Specifically, the city shall, and then there's 6 more paragraphs.
So the reason I wanted to read that paragraph is because that paragraph specifically calls out that this is a list of definitions for special needs groups.
No, it includes for affordable low-income housing and special needs groups. There's not a comma between.
Which it defines special needs groups as those minorities listed.
No, affordable low-income housing.
The state defines those ones
So
called
my
out.
question is not what the state defines. My question was, to be consistent with the next page, are we forbidden from adding any extra groups? And I would add a group in there, male-headed households, right, for a single, right? So just to be consistent, otherwise it just seems like, why? And that ripples through several places in this document.
Well, the state doesn't consider male-headed households.
I understand that.
Special needs groups,
but
so
then
they wouldn't fall under that definition.
But then the next page says we're not going to discriminate regardless of race, religion, or sex. Well, this one says we are.
I just think it's a poor placement for that particular paragraph in the context of what that paragraph is trying to explain. I think given the context, it would seem out of place for it to say male head of household there. I think it's kind of out of place that it even needs to get into that level in the first place of defining.
I'm not trying to have a debate, so Mick, let me ask you, what's the legal question here? Does that sound like discrimination or not?
It does in one context. One section pertains to special needs groups, the other pertains to something else. I think.
It's just, I want to read the words. It says affordable low-income housing. It doesn't have a comma there.
Okay.
And then it's got and special needs groups.
Yes.
Right? So if I have a person who happens to be.
Including.
Well, that's okay. You can say special needs groups include these.
Can we make a real simple?
We can make an amendment to say just single-headed households.
Yeah, something like that.
Or in addition to other special needs groups as well, if that.
Yeah.
So that it encompasses all special needs groups, if that works too.
Right, otherwise I'm looking at who are the individuals that I'm working with, they're gonna feel like, well, we're left out.
They are.
I'm sorry, it may be a mistake that the state's made, but it's like, I wanna be fair to everybody, right? So it's like.
Either of those changes is fine, whatever you guys want to approve.
I feel like if we put single head of households, that's fine. I feel like if we start getting into the male, female, and start going to that level, then it's going to come into non-binary and many other titles that I think would be too expansive for this document. So
Yeah,
I think single head households is more appropriate.
And then it becomes clear, right, and matches the next page. And that's like in 3 places, so it's a pretty trivial change.
Got it.
The next thing says specific actions include, and it's got some words in there I didn't understand. Focus particularly in areas of concentrated overpayment. What does that mean?
Areas where people, so the census identifies where areas of the community where persons are paying more than like 3 times or 3.5 times their income on housing. So that's overpayment. You're overpaying, meaning you probably aren't
So-
paying all your bills because you're paying so much for housing.
So in other words, if a person is over X% of their annual income.
Correct.
That's what you consider overpayment.
Yes.
But what does it mean, like, the city's action will be to focus particularly in an area of concentrated overpayment?
So there are maps associated with
I
the
saw
document.
maps.
Yeah, so they include areas where that has been identified.
So it's just, we have to identify it on the map. We're not building a committee to go address this or, okay, right? And then the other question I have in this same section, it says, the city will provide at least 2 trainings during the planning period with landlords and tenants on state and federal fair housing laws. Do we do that? Okay.
Good answer.
I'm just trying to say it's okay, but I don't ever remember us doing that since I've been on council. So that is an action that you're taking back?
Yes, and the planning period is an 8-year period as well, so that's 2 times over 8 years.
Yeah, no
We've got
problem.
quite a bit of.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? And then here's another one that's just one that I learned after having worked in IBM and dealing with contracts for a long time.
Sure.
The word, when you put bi in front of a word like bi-weekly, if you're on a bi-weekly payroll, how often are you paid?
Twice a month?
No, that's bi-monthly. Are you on a bi-weekly payroll?
Every other week.
Or it could be twice a week. And if you look in the dictionary, bi means either twice a period or every 2 periods. So my other suggestion, can we take out the word biannual and say, is this mean biannual training? Is that every 2 years or is that twice a year? I'm just confused with the wording.
I would assume every 2 years, but we can make that clarification.
Yeah, it's just either that or put a definition sheet at the back of it and say biannual means whatever you mean it to mean. Because if this training is once in 8 years and we have to do it twice, the next paragraph down here says, but it's biannual training that the city has to provide to the landlords and property owners. Wait, so this now expands it further because it's not just landlords, it's landlords and property. So is that all property owners? Or is that only property owners that are?
Multifamily property owners.
But it doesn't say that. So I'm not trying to be legal about this, but
Sure.
every time I run into problems in the past on contracts, it was over, what did you mean by the word? Right? And I would just like to make sure it's clear. So biannual, you define it as either twice a year or every 2 years. I don't care which, I just want to make sure I know what you mean. And then the second one is training. I'm going to read the paragraph over. Provide biannual training to landlords and property owners to avoid discriminating practices based on income or protected classes or the requirement to grant a reasonable accommodation request. I don't know what group that is. Is that all property owners in Colfax? Right? I don't know what that is. So Wes or Mick, can you help me understand that? Do you understand it from the language here? Because if you don't, and I don't, I think we need just clarification on it.
It's multifamily property owners.
I think the intention is to open up, advertise from a practical standpoint. What we do is we advertise to all landlords and property owners who rent out their property, because that's
okay. That's okay.
So I just look at it in the context.
Yeah.
Who would benefit from this training? It's going to be folks who rent out their property. So
Right. But I don't want to be in the middle of a city lawsuit because somebody who's a property owner didn't get invited to one of these, doesn't have a multifamily thing or doesn't rent.
Yeah. So,
Right.
we probably wouldn't send out an invitation to every
Right.
address.
So can we clarify the definition of property owner?
Sure.
Right. Yeah, I think fundamentally, you don't really need to change a lot in the document, but you should have a definition sheet of what do you mean when you say term, right? And that may be a good future thing.
I think it'll be in the general plan.
Right. Yeah. And then there's a last section in this section that talks about things are related to defensible space goals and all, but it doesn't mention anything about the city's ordinance. Right? So is this not connected to the city's ordinance?
I'm
that we
sorry,
passed?
defensible space? I'm not following, but
Well, the bottom of page 22, it says you're required to, the specific action shall include maintain information on organizations and programs that are available to landowners to assist them in meeting defensible space goals and taking other steps that may decrease fire insurance rates to reduce disaster displacement risk. These programs include the National Fire Protection Association's FireWise USA program, CAL FIRE's Landowners Assistant and Wildfire Preparation Informational Tools, and Placer County's CHIPPR program.
I would assume that the reason that our specific ordinance isn't in there is because one, it's not really a resource. It's more of a rule that we have in place. And two, it's something that's malleable over time. It's not something that necessarily will be consistent for the full 8 years of this document.
Well, but that's true with like CAL FIRE's tools that they have, their online tools. They change over time too. So I would just say, I would suggest that you add that in there because then it's the set. And you can include the words may include. That's okay, right? So that's that one there. Let's see. The next one I have is, because we've addressed all those. Low barrier, we addressed that one. Oh, can you explain the section, I think it's section 610, that says amend the zoning ordinance to treat employee/farm worker housing that serves, except, what does it mean, employee/farm worker? Is this any employee in the city, or is this only people that are agricultural employees in the city? What does that mean?
It's agricultural mostly, but it's where you're housing employees on site of the work that you're doing. So
does that really apply to Colfax?
not necessarily, but it's a state law.
Okay.
So
It could apply to au pairs or anyone who is a live-in employee of some kind that is documented.
Okay, so then I'm just trying to understand it. So if there's a live-in employee, like say you're elderly and you have a caretaker that lives with you, that's taking care of you, does that cover this?
no,
No.
it
Okay.
has to do with agricultural employees and farm worker employees where you're housing them on site and making sure that your definitions, I don't believe we identified any in the document.
Yeah, I don't think you did either.
Right, so again, unfortunately, it's kind of a one size fits all. You have to apply these employee housing standards that if you have farm worker housing, that these are the standards that you would follow.
I have no problem with that. My only question was, does it apply to people that are outside of agriculture?
No.
Okay, so that's not clear from
Like
here.
it applies to, well, yeah, because like vineyards and.
But that's agriculture.
Correct.
Right. But if, like, I'll use
No,
Kennedy's case
that's
here.
not the same.
That would
No,
not be the
no,
same.
that's
Because
not
the
the
way
same.
I read it, that would be the same.
Okay,
So I'm missing some part of the definition that I don't understand.
right,
Right, so if you could clarify that, again, I think it's just a definitional question.
okay.
Right? And then the other question I had is, where is the RM zone in Colfax? I mean, maybe it's a West question. Wes, where's the RM zone in Colfax? I looked at some of my maps and I can't figure that one out. I can figure out where the R1 and R2 is. Where's an RM zone?
There's a zoning map in the document. I can't tell you off the top of my head exactly where there are some R zones, but there are some spots throughout town where there are.
Do you know what RM means?
It's the medium density.
Residential medium.
Yes.
Medium?
Yeah, it's a 6,000 square foot minimum lot size, and I believe it's the RM1 is 3,000
Yeah,
square feet.
I had no problem with the other ones, but I just, when my reading, I didn't find that. Okay, and you covered the accessory dwelling unit. That was my question from earlier. And then back on page 25, you have the purpose of an EIR addendum. Can you define what EIR is? Yeah, that would be really nice to have in the document, wouldn't it? And when I went back reading for it, I can't find it in this section in here. So I think it's a definition that's missing, just put it in. It doesn't change any of the content, but it makes it clear what it means, right? And I think I had one more. Second. So just a general question, did you guys prepare all the housing graphs and charts and all to go in here? That was a really nice job. So I'm not a complainer, that was a really nice job. Give me 1 second to find the other. All right. So then down on page 73, it says the city also supports ELI households. What is that?
Extremely low income. And I believe it may be defined in the glossary section of the document.
I couldn't find it, but if it's not, could you put it in?
Sure.
Right, and then I think there's one more tab, okay. And then on page 94, it says in here, and this is about disproportionate housing needs and risk displacement. It says, to prevent either of these situations, which I assume it means disproportionate housing needs or displacement risk, the city will assist homeowners to identify and apply rehabilitation funding. So where does that funding come from? Rehabilitation funding?
Typically CDBG programs.
Okay, so that would be a grant we would get or something? Okay, and then, but then it's got an and part. And will develop code enforcement to identify the areas of the city with greater rehabilitation needs. So you're going to we're going to do proactive code enforcement? I thought that was not the way the city does this.
Yeah.
And that's what this says.
Yeah, I think the intention is, in the way code enforcement, I understand historically, has been on a complaint basis.
Yes.
However, if there are life safety issues, the city will be proactive on. So,
Well, housing displacement is not a life safety.
No, but if there's a situation where there's someone that may be displaced because of a code enforcement issue, or because of a life safety issue with their home, I think that's a situation
I see. You're reading this the exact opposite way of what it says. I can understand that, but that's not what it says, right? So if that's what you mean, I agree with that. That makes a lot of sense. I don't get that from the reading here. What I get from the reading here is we will develop a code enforcement to identify these areas. Not we have a problem and we're going to use everything we can to solve the problem, right? Like a person was displaced because their house caught on fire or whatever happened, right? Yeah, so that one, it seems like the language is reversed, right? Well, otherwise, I'm going to turn around the West and says, show me your program to do this code enforcement, and we don't have one.
Yeah, it's something that needs to be developed. It's a program that the.
But are we committing to develop such a program that's basically, the way I read it, it's proactive, not reactive to a complaint?
I think the better question is this something that the state's requiring to be in our housing element? So yes, we will be developing a plan to meet the state requirements.
Okay, so I'm going to just pick on this one as an example. Can you show me where the state requires that we have to develop that code enforcement? Where would I look?
So state law is AB 686.
And you can quote a section in there that says the city is required to develop.
I will quote what the law is, and it's AB 686. And I'm going to explain it to you. So there are a number of options that are included.
Okay.
This is one of the options. As you move forward, again, it has to be developed. So you go through the process and you don't develop it, then you have to identify other ways of doing this
this is a new law. This is the state has a list of things. This was the lessest of the requirements. They want you to do rent control. They want you to do a lot of things.
Yep.
These were the compromises that were made as you go through this 8 years, and this isn't your best approach to helping with displacement or housing rehab. You have to finite and figure out what's going to be the best approach. So this is the response to the state to get you approved that you will do these things. Again, as you're going through implementation, if this isn't a right fit for Colfax, you have to come up with other ways of showing the state how you are addressing potential health and safety violations and displacement of residents.
So if I read through that bill, I'm going to find a section in the bill that says that one of the options is the city will develop
Correct.
Code enforcement program.
There's actually AFFH guidelines. It's 119 pages. It's available on HCD's website. Emmanuel can get you a link to that.
Yeah, I'm going to go read through it because I just would like to see it. Because a lot of times people say things are in a bill and they have the flavor of what's in it, but they've gone maybe 2 steps too far.
Sure.
And I don't know if that's the case or not. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying we don't have code enforcement stuff in Colfax except through a complaint-based system. It's not proactive to identify areas.
Have done code enforcement on complaint.
Yep.
Sitting there.
Right.
When he was doing it, he said.
Right.
That's an example.
Right. But this is not like a specific place. This is like areas of the city, which sounds like it's wide reaching. I'm just worried about scope. Yeah. Right, and that's all I had. So.
Thank you both. Trinity.
David, did you have anything real quick?
We do have just a couple more comments on Facebook.
Okay.
Tom Parnham was asking for clarification on the EIR. I think you guys already said that's the environmental impact report.
Yep.
Okay, and then Travis Berry said he'd like the public allowed to make comments on this topic before approving it.
We did have the opportunity for the public to make comments during the public comment section of the public hearing, which was closed by Mayor Lohman earlier.
If we have public comments that have come up, though, we can address those because we're trying to accommodate people that are online that may have a delay. There's nothing legally that says we can't address those comments. Thank you. Want to make sure. All right, Dad.
So I'm going to go ahead and keep this brief. So my number one question has to do with development issues and, being able to make these affordable units possible. And one of the big barriers that we have up here is insurance. And I guess my question is fairly general. With us knowing that insurance is such a barrier up here and it can be nearly impossible to get insured or stay insured, how does that affect our requirement to continue to make room for additional housing?
It's a good question. It's not probably addressed in detail in the housing element, but that would be considered a non-governmental constraint on the development of housing. And basically we just identify it in the document, and what we have to do in the housing element is identify sites and show how you can facilitate. That is a non-governmental constraint. That is an issue in quite a few parts of the state. So you don't get penalized for not building the units. You show that you're putting forth your best faith effort. So, there are factors beyond the city's control.
And so if we wanted to address this proactively, for the next cycle, for example, when SACOG does their dissemination of how many, units are allocated for which parts of their territory, would that be the appropriate platform for us to address that?
Yeah, I think through your legislatures, that would be the best,
option to start at the top as the way it trickles down. Unfortunately, the way that the RENA methodology is done, it's just on growth production, or just on, they look at transportation plans and population growth based on transportation patterns. And whether the land is available or not it's tricky on how their methodology, but making your case heard is definitely go to the top, go to your, write your letters of your issues to help them facilitate at the top level when they start doing the methodology. These are our issues in our region.
So that's really where the systematic issue starts. It's at the top of the tree. It's not in the middle.
No.
Okay, because I know that this isn't the appropriate platform to try to do anything about it right now, but I think in the future, it's something we need to aggressively address because.
And rally with your neighbors as well, because you're all in that same boat, so.
Right, because there's only so much housing we can realistically push here without making a huge displacement risk.
Right.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you both very much for answering all those questions for us. And do we have anything else on public comment?
Tom Parnham says, please stop one council member from hijacking the meeting. These issues are better handled in a committee. This is not the city's best interest going into this kind of detail. Travis Berry says, I suggest Sean forms a committee for Joe to address these issues on a better platform and bring this back to council ASAP.
Thanks, guys. Joe, do you feel your issues were addressed?
Well, if they make the changes I talked about, they would be, but until they're made, and I think it's just a definition sheet for the most part, and that one group's piece.
Okay.
I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think it changes the content, but I think it clarifies the content. So.
Okay. Yeah, with the changes, and we can make those changes correct without having to go back to the state. They're just minor changes. So, okay, perfect.
Well, if that's the case, if you're ready to entertain.
If I can get a motion.
I will go ahead and make a motion that we adopt the new housing element with the modifications. I should say the minor modifications that were identified this evening.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? All right, motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to item 6, the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are routine in nature and will be approved by a blanket motion and council vote. Got to get a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. We'll move on to item 7, public comment. It's time for members of the public to address council on items not on the agenda. Please, we're not going to have any discussion about these items, but please try and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Tim Dion. I'm representing a local business and other businesses. I just want to inform the council, since you guys are talking about grants earlier and all that stuff. In order to receive, like Nevada City just received $1 million last year, and the school, Nevada County received $1 million. You're able to get $2 million per city or county if you allow specifically the sale of adult use cannabis. If you ban it, you're not able to get these grants from the state. And I would just like to emphasize that the Proposition 64 was to help detour the sale of illegal cannabis throughout the state, not just in this neighborhood, but all neighborhoods. That hasn't really been addressed with the city's ban on adult use sales, recreational sales, whichever one you'd like to refer to. But the fact that you're not getting money that's well deserved to this community that has a dispensary that dispenses cannabis, but doesn't sell adult use or recreational cannabis, makes it to where this cities can apply for those grant funds, which I'll say again is $1 million and $2 million to be shared within the city. Like Nevada City got $1 million The fire department and schools are, bickering over it as we speak. And the county got $1 million. These are available every year as the cannabis taxes go up. It's based on the excise tax that's paid in California. It's available through that grant money. There's several grants that were started in 2018 when the program started. Nevada City's been getting grants for a few years now because they've allowed adult use sales. So I'm just want to address the fact that you guys are talking about pretty low dollar amounts of grant money for the city when here it is. So I would just like to, the council to consider putting on the agenda to allow for the one dispensary that sells medicinal cannabis to sell adult use cannabis at the same premises, which is allowed by state law. And that's all. Any questions?
Thank you, Tim. I just wanted to point out, I did reach out to the state board regarding the Prop 64 grant funds for cohort 3. And I did request clarification on what we would need to do to qualify and what amounts we would qualify for if we did qualify. So I appreciate you speaking on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other public comment? Thank you, Shanna. All right, we'll move on to item 8, council and staff business. Item 8A, committee reports and council information items. David, you got anything? Yep.
Nope.
Not quite ready for that. 1 second. Just give a little bit of information from the Foster Fire Safe Council meeting. Let's see. I just wanted to bring up that we're still looking to form firewise communities in our area. The Foster County currently has 134 communities in the area, and they're expanding every day. It'd be something really good for our communities to get onto to help get groups together. It gives funding and guidance for clearing out properties. So we take little neighborhoods like Forest Hill Avenue or Pleasant Street and break the city down into little pieces. And if we get people that are interested in that, I'd be happy to give out information and help get people together to start forming these communities in our town. Actually give you a national designation for forming a firewise community, and it really helps with the insurance rates and when insurance companies come to look at your neighborhoods and look at the area as a whole when they have these firewise communities in. So that's something we could really do to help people get insurance up here. The more we have, the easier it is. Let's see. During the 100-degree days, there are going to be cooling centers open here in Colfax, also in Auburn and Forest Hill. So if need to beat the heat, they'll be available. I think ours is going to be set up downtown in the library. And then that's right. And then same with Forest Hills Library and the Auburn Library. Thank you, Wes. And if you're having issues during the heat, power's out, something like that, you need to get contact for non-emergency help, you can dial 211 in Placer County, and they'll be able to get you connected with assistance and services. And just also wanted to bring up, this could be a good business, but I just didn't now since it was in the meeting. The substation, generator station, PG&E started work on that. We are expecting rolling blackouts this year again, it sounds like, and Trinity could touch on that a little bit. But, so we'll be prepared. Hopefully we'll be set up by the time they start doing that. And our next meeting is going to be the third Thursday in September. That is September. What is it? Put the date on that. It'll be September 23rd. All right, and that was all I had. Wes?
Sorry, I don't have anything to add. I was just going to mention the microgrid station is started as a positive note for the community. I think everybody's been waiting patiently. thanks to PG&E for staying on top of it and getting that project started. I have nothing there.
All right, thanks, Wes. Move on to item 9, council business. Wes, back to you.
Mr. Mayor, as a member of the public and the council is aware that the Board of Supervisors established a homeless advisory committee to the Board of Supervisors. The goal of the advisory is to look at all of the homeless resources in the region and try to find a way to combine some of those services or do recommendations to combine services to enhance the homeless resources of it. So the Board of Supervisors asked each of the jurisdictions to form an ad hoc committee to have 2 members of council participate on that advisory committee. So tonight, staff is looking for council first to decide whether you want to have an advisory committee. Second, if you do, who would like to be on that advisory? I know council member Mendoza is not here tonight. She's ill, but she has expressed interest if council wishes to establish.
I'll open up for public comment. Any comment on that? Doesn't look like we have anybody here that wants to comment on it. All right, turn it over to council. David, do you got any comments on this item? Any interest?
Okay with Barney? Representative?
One of the representatives. Okay. Go. Joe, any comments?
No, but I think we need 2
We
members.
did. Okay.
Yes, and I'd like to volunteer.
All right, great. We got 2 members. So can I get a motion to approve Marnie and Trinity on the homeless ad hoc committee for Placer County?
So moved.
Yeah, to establish a committee and then appoint Marnie and Trinity. Thank you.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Same.
All right, thank you. Opposed? All right, great. Motion passes. All right, go to the order. David, anything?
No, not this time.
All right. Joe?
Yeah, just in case people aren't aware, a lot of the state unemployment insurance this past week runs out. So there's a lot of people who were counting on that as their income that may have been laid off or whatever, that haven't found a job yet, are all of a sudden going to be in struggling situations. I'm working with a couple people up in the area where I live right now, just trying to help them figure out what to do. But this problem is going to get pretty serious, especially since some of these people have had jobs for 20 or 30 years and the job's gone. So I don't have an answer for what to do and how to handle it, but just we need to be sensitive on that.
Councilmember Toole, I want to remind the community that the city still has a subsistence program out there. If you meet the income threshold and you've had a COVID impact, that money's still available to the community. We encourage people to apply. As it stands right now, we've had 0 applicants.
Wow. Sure, there's people out there that could use that assistance. It's there. It's not going anywhere except for back to the state. So please reach out for it if you can possibly use it and meet the requirements.
So let me ask this question. For about $500, we could send a flyer out to every resident in the city of Colfax. I know I did that in my campaign when I ran for this position. So would it be worthwhile for the city to invest $500 to help people like this be aware of the program?
Program itself could actually fund that as well too.
Yeah. I don't know. I would be agreeable to spending the postage for doing that.
I would agree if we could please. And when you say 0 applicants, do you mean 0? Because I know a lot of people, I've sat them down and helped them fill out the information online. So do we have a disconnect between the online portal and I'm a little worried about that.
So they're doing the online portal, they're doing the initial piece of it, and then our CDBG consultants reaching out to them for follow-up.
Okay.
And nobody's following up, provide the additional information. They're taking the time to do the initial 1 page, but they're not following up with the other additional.
Would it be an invasion of privacy to share the contact information and maybe have some of us personally reach out to these people? Because because I'm concerned that maybe they're getting overwhelmed.
Well, we provided the last training, there's a detail in how to fill it out, and our consultant will sit down with them individually and help them fill it out on there as well. Maybe we can clarify that in the flyer we send out as well too.
I would strongly recommend we do
Some
the
contact
flyer.
information for council members. Just to make sure that, you know, they feel comfortable that they can come talk to a person that is local, that they know their name, they know their face. Cause I don't know what else to do to get people to turn it in, but I know a lot of people need the help.
That done.
All right, Trinity? All right, I got nothing. Motion to adjourn?
We'll move.
All right,
Second.
second. All right, all in favor?
Hey.
All right, adjourn. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Sit down.